What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to everybody's favorite podcast. We are the Bev Boys, and we are your one-stop shop for your energy drink reviews and for your performance talks. Of course, I'm Brian. My fuzzy-headed friend here is
Christian. What's up?
He's coming through his hair, and we're just kind of getting started. We have a good lighthearted episode today. A couple different topics to talk about, but of course, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a fun time. We're here with each other just like we are every Sunday, and this is the light of my life. Look at him. And no, Christian is not in a Target. He's in one of the Cubs facilities. They just also love red.
Yes, I promise.
But we got some good drinks today. You want to go first?
Yeah. This is one we've had on the podcast before. I would say it's like I call this like an Elon classic. And I picked it up, quick trip yesterday, a little 2 for $5.50 action. I got the Rain sour gummy worm. You already know what it is. Really good flavor. I don't really have much else to say.
I believe that was one of like the first 10 drinks we ever recorded.
Yeah, because this came out when we were working at Elon together, and we stocked the fridge with like a 12 pack, a couple 12 packs, and they were gone in short order. So this is Bev Boys approved. I know Brian's got something real special for us today, something a little bit different than we've tried before.
Yes, my San Pellegrino Chow.
That too.
No, I got something really good. If anyone does follow us on socials, all 6 of you, shout out my boy Hank, because he got us tagged and got us in a conversation. Now, Bear Bells did not send us this. I had to go buy this. So Bear Bells, I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping you guys would be super cool and send me like a nice little package. But we have the Bear Bells Protein Soda. This is the sweet cherry flavor. They had 3 flavors. It was sweet cherry, the pineapple sunrise flavor, and I can't remember what the last one was, but this one just looked the most enticing. I like the colors, that light blue kind of purple soda shop feel. There is 10 grams of protein in it, so it's a clear protein drink. It's not thick. It's going to be like a more like actual traditional energy drink flavor, and it is still an energy drink because it has 200 milligrams of caffeine inside of the soda. Cool part about this, obviously, like Bear Bells is big on like natural flavors and not a ton of like artificial stuff. So that is going to be one of those things. There is no cherry juice in there. As a cherry soda, I think like some tart cherry extract would have been really cool. It would have made this price on this drink skyrocket. It's already like, it was $3.29. So for 200 milligrams of caffeine plus 10 grams of protein, you're kind of on par with some of the energy drinks that are out there. But 50 calories, all of that's coming from the protein, and then 1 gram of carbohydrates, 0 fat. The cool thing about it too is that, like I said, it's 355 milliliters per can, less than 0.01% lactose, which is cool. And then it's a clear whey protein isolate, tongue twister. So obviously whey protein isolate, it's not completely hydrolyzed, but it is broken down. It's a little bit cleaner than like a concentrate. It also means it's going to be thinner. So they typically do that when they go down to like a clear kind of protein drink. It is recommended that the maximum consumption is 2 cans per day. Best served when chilled. Once opened, consume same day. No, little write-up or anything. It's going to be a very standard kind of can. That's just the way Bear Bells does it. Their packaging is very simple as they kind of go through it. And it's not a low-calorie food. It's actually 15% of the daily value. So it's not a food product. It's and I believe this is because it's in Sweden. The way they do it is you have to kind of really classify whether you are like a supplement or a food product. But should we pop those tops?
Let's do it.
There's some vapor coming out of the top here.
Where'd you pick that up at, Brian? Vitamin Shop?
Vitamin Shop. Yep, they had them like in the back, and I'm like on like an end cap in the back of the store facing like their back room, and I was like, wouldn't you kind of put that in the front?
Yeah, brother, put this at the front. You'll be selling a lot more.
They were like pushing the Jockos, which Jocko hasn't gotten great reviews from us. I almost picked one up to review just to be like, do we give it another shot? And I was like,
I do think at some point we're due for another Jocko review just to I think now because it does have. I mean, that's like a direct comparison to Bum Energy. I feel like at this point, same size of
It is.
can, the kind of that lower caffeine, high nootropic type of formula. So I think we're due for another Jocko review.
We have to kind of give them another shot.
Yeah, we do, and I'm sure they've revamped their flavors, or at least I'm gonna hope they have.
It's such a strong cherry. It smells like tart cherry, like extract. Tasting though, you could definitely tell it's got some protein in it. I'll put it that way.
Okay, is it
There's
like
like an aftertaste.
a little bit bitter, like kind of when you have like straight amino acids?
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
slight bitter, and this is my one thing is like when they do like a clear protein drink, it always leaves this what feels like this like film like over your tongue. You know, it almost feels like you gotta like brush your teeth or kind of scrape like you do like a tongue scraper like when you're done. It doesn't taste terrible at all. Um, it's a good flavor. If someone's like, I need to get 10 more grams of protein, but I'm tired, blah blah blah, you know, that kind of thing. I feel like this is a very niche market that this is going to go to.
but if you're depends on when you're tired. If you're tired, you're about to go to bed, you probably don't want to crack that energy drink.
Exactly, yeah. It's definitely the energy drink itself isn't flat, but the flavor is like very flat, like muted. Like it's almost like you can taste a little bit more of the ingredients than you can taste the flavor.
You're
And it kind
expecting
of
more. You want
and you're
more of that cherry. You want that
yeah,
cherry to pop.
I want that cherry to pop that top.
That's right.
But like, yeah, you're just kind of sitting there thinking like, I kind of mentioned it earlier of like, oh, maybe you'd have some tart cherry. Like maybe some tart cherry would kind of like
Bring the
bring that
flavor out a little
flavor
bit.
out. Yeah. And then when you burp, there is like a little bit of like a cough medicine kind of taste to it.
Oh.
Only on the burp, not necessarily while you're drinking it.
Okay.
Um,
Only on the burp.
yeah, only on the burp. I'll work my way through the can and we'll get like a full review at the end.
Yeah, let's see
So
if
far, it's
the
not
experience
wowing me.
changes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll keep working through it. Um, yeah, we have some things that we wanted to talk about. Kind of starting here. Oh, that burp is just not sitting well now. um,
Those with acid reflux may want to stay away from Bearbills. Protein soda.
yeah, at least the
Disclaimer.
soda. The bars are
The
incredible,
bars are gas. They want
which
to
is
stay away
crazy.
from those for your wallet's sake.
Yeah, which is crazy because the wild cherry protein bar I thought was going to be gross. Fantastic. It was like a white chocolate kind of cherry. It was so good. So I had a lot of maybe it's because I came into it with a little bit more expectations because I had the bar so low for the wild cherry protein bar and it just wowed me that I was like, okay, like they can do cherry. Cherry's another flavor too. It's kind of like peach, it's kind of like mango where it's like this could be really good or this could be dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a hard flavor to hit on. It's like do you do too much? Do you underwhelm it? Is it like, that kind of thing. And I think I had the expectations kind of flip-flopped with the bar and the drink at this point of like maybe if I did them in the other order I'd be a lot happier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we want to talk about there's some like obviously college football playoff is going on. We have the semifinals occurring and then the final to be taken on for the full championship. But like the new year brings in new surroundings for a lot of people with coaching changes, which it's a tough thing. We saw people, the internet is ruthless and they don't care about how anyone's life is or anyone's feelings. We know that well, we're well aware of it, but like some of these people are finding out they're getting fired and they have to find a new job on New Year's Eve. Like what a way to ring in the new year, you know? these coaching changes are ruthless because, and it's like it doesn't just affect like the head coach, it affects everyone that's on the staff. Um, Through and through. So like even in our on our side, like there's been a lot of like position changes, school changes, organization changes. Um, and this is like it's one of those cyclical natures. Like you almost have to expect it. Like you buy the ticket, you ride the ride, right? You know, back in the day, we had Jake Niederman talk to you guys when you guys were interns, and he even mentioned like the higher you go, the money's way better, but then you have all the things that come with it, which is more visibility. More visibility is more scrutiny. If something doesn't go right, they want to change. Like they have too much invested. Another cough syrup burp. Um, but like it's weird to think about. Obviously, like in the broadest sense, you'll have, hey, my job is based on my performance. If I'm not doing my job, I'm out. But to same extent, like with the support staff, your job performance isn't necessarily wins and losses. And we've kind of talked about that before. But in the football world, you're not part of the strength and conditioning staff. You're a football coach who is on the performance side. So like that staff is held accountable for winning or losing. And so when you could have every metric that you have, just lighten it up. But if you're objectively bad at football, you're not going to have a job. So what's your take on that, or like if someone has to kind of like hedge their bets on those, where it's like if you're part of that football staff but you're the strength coach, like are you worried about them getting stronger, or are you just worried about like can I get them in better positions to play football, or like what would you kind of do there?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously going into this field in general, you kind of know that that's, especially if you're going to take the football route, you know that that's kind of the norm. And you fly too close to the sun, you might get burned. But like you said, you're also making a lot of money. So if you're able to take one of those jobs, like I think it's people aren't going to, if they choose that route, they're not going to stray away from those jobs just because like they know it's high risk, but it's also a very high reward. And it's what I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later is like a lot of times, like you said, people are kind of just flip flopping. Like you get fired from one school, another, similar role opens up at a different school. You're probably going to be more like a top candidate for that. So like you're probably just going to go to a different school that's maybe at the same level, maybe around the same pay scale because you had that experience in that role. So you do know that, it's that is a completely different thing from having to like move your family potentially across the country. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Obviously, as strength coaches, like we know that job security isn't always the highest, and we usually don't have a lot of us don't have a big problem of moving around. That's all fine and good when it's just you, but it's when you're affecting other people, and especially I can't speak to this, but if you have kids that are like in school, like having to move them around constantly, I think is a completely different thing. It's something that you definitely have to consider. Um, it's tough because I do think us as humans in general, like we crave certainty. We don't like to be in the unknown. So we want to be able to quantify things. That's why we want to be able to quantify things in order to like justify that justify our jobs, that we're doing a good job as far as whatever KPIs you might have, metrics. And yeah, we know that all that stuff is good to show progression on your part, but we also know that the weight room and your job is a lot more general than the sport of football. Now I think as time goes on, we're starting to see it a little bit more, and I think it's only going to continue. You'll see people that are kind of trying to bridge that gap between strength coach and skill. And I think ideally, in an ideal world, if you have kind of your like a true high performance model, which like we've talked about is like something that probably no one really has, but we're always striving toward. That's what makes it so like the allure is so strong. I think at some point, ideally like strength coaches will have a role in like planning practice and like, you could do your own internal research and see which, potentially maybe you can see which drills like translate to, on-field performance. I don't know if we're there yet. I'm also not working in football, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough because obviously you can have all your like objective metrics of like strength, speed, and all that stuff, but that's so much different than playing the sport of football and having to like react in a chaotic environment. You can't really simulate that in your role. And I don't know if it's worth it to do that because your job is to they're going to get so much of that through the sport itself. And I mean, football is a little bit different. Like if you, I was thinking about this not too long ago. Football is a sport where you'll see, especially with AAU circuit, the grassroots circuit with youth sports. Certain sports will play year round. Like baseball is one of them where like you play your season. Like if you're a kid, and I don't want to get into a I don't want to get into a rant about like sport specificity too early and stuff like that. But baseball is a sport where like a lot of people will play like almost year round. They'll play on a travel team. They'll play on their school team. There's fall ball. Football is like, yeah, you have a spring season and then your regular season, but like it's so physically demanding that you can't just play that year round. Like it's almost one of those things where you can just hammer the weight room really hard, just try to get big and strong and fast as shit and do a little bit of skill work. And you can still like, obviously, like there's tactical and technical stuff that goes into it, but it's less skill dominant than say like a baseball where you always have to be like touching on those skills. So I think as a
Mm-hmm.
strength coach, it's still better to err on the side of like taking care of that and making sure that's like A1 right in place versus worrying about like, oh, because one, I mean, it depends. Like maybe that's a little bit out of your scope. Like you're not a football coach, you're a strength coach. You probably know a lot about football, but you probably chose to be a strength coach for a reason because you're maybe a little bit better at that or you know a lot more about that. I think it's better to do your job really well than trying to worry about like trying to do trying to
Someone
go into
else's.
air, yeah, and then maybe having it blow up in your face. That's just my initial thoughts. I could be completely off on that.
The other the other thing to kind of consider, and it's maybe a complaint, but at the same time, it's also just thinking like the football coach's role on game day is very huge. The strength coach's role on game day almost affects nothing to the game. Um, like for example, you're probably putting in the GPS units to get the data. You're running the game day warm ups most likely, and then maybe if you have some rehab athletes that you're kind of going out there and working with them prior to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, none of those affect the outcome because that rehab session, that single session, isn't going to get them ready unless you're got a kid who's finally returning to the two games and he's just like, I want to do something to feel mentally better. But at the same time, it's not like you're putting those GPSs and you're staring at an iPad on the sideline going, this player loads too high, we got to pull them.
They don't give a shit.
No coach is going to look at you and go, okay, pull my starting wide receiver because he has too much high speed volume. They're going to go, we need to ride that because it's do or die.
Mm-hmm.
That game day warm up isn't going to necessarily like directly influence the outcome of the game. And once the game starts, the strength coach's role kind of shifts back as more of like, I don't want to say like an operations manager or a sideline manager, but you're on the sideline. You might assist like gathering the troops when it comes to like bringing over the punt unit, bringing over this unit, or grabbing this person. But you're not calling plays. You're not like pulling formations for the most part. In most situations, you're not. So it's really tough to be like, okay, you have to be there at the game. Nothing you do will influence the outcome, but you're going to be held responsible for the outcome as well.
Yeah, which
So
that's I
it's
mean, yeah, it's tough. So that is one of the things I like about. It is kind of cool. Like most of our work is done before the game, and then you kind of
yeah,
just get to. I mean, you're just
enjoy
lucky enough you
it
get to watch a football game, or you get to watch a
from the
baseball game, which
sidelines.
is nice. Like, it's yeah, I've thought about that. Like a lot of like you're not really like working during the game. Like you're at work, but you're not working versus the coach. That's like their most like in like it's game
That's when
time
they're
for them
locked in.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're I mean exactly.
It's
But would
just
it
it's tough.
how would it be looked at if you just got to, you know, skate by, you know, all the football, all the skill staff gets fired and you get to stick around because, you know, your metrics were good. Like if you're isn't that kind of part of being the team though? Like, yeah, we
I
may
see what
not
you're doing here.
all like I'm like, isn't that all like you can't just say like, oh, like you didn't play, so I can, you know, the people that don't play, they're gonna talk and say like, oh, like if we would have done this and this and this, but you weren't in the game, but you're the whole team. Like the team wins, they'd win together. Like everyone was a part of that win. Everyone was a part of that loss. You know, obviously people are gonna play bigger and smaller roles, but how would it? Can you just? Is it? How would it be looked upon if like you as the strength coach were just given like essentially like immunity as long as your certain metrics were, you know, quote unquote good enough to standard. Like
Okay.
people are I don't know. That's
Don't they do that on the Olympic side?
they do. They
And
do.
doesn't
It's a lot
doesn't
more
that happen
common.
to medical?
That's also another thing I was going to bring up is a lot of times medical, you know, athletic training staffs have a lot more job security.
You're like, damn.
It's also I think easier because if someone gets hurt, a lot of times people are going to look to the strength coach. They're not going to look to
towards the medical
yeah
side.
yeah. Hey, how's it going? They're not going to look towards like an athletic trainer because those people are their job is to return people from injury or
Yeah,
if there's a decision where say like he can't go today, like they're always. I
they're
mean,
the more
I
reactive side.
yeah, and like they're always supposed to. I mean, I think everyone's always trying to act with the player's best interest at heart, but that is like they can't just say like
He's good and send him back
he's
out there.
good just because they know like damn like we really need him. Like if it's
Yeah.
against what's best for them, they have to make that decision. So I think that's they may be looked upon a little bit differently in that regard. That's a good idea, honestly. We should get a we should get an
An
athletic
AT.
trainer on the podcast, honestly, because I think there's a lot of we're making some assumptions here. Obviously, like I think we're making educated assumptions, but I think there's that could be good. That could be good for the podcast because I think ATs shit on strength coaches shit on ATs from time to time. I feel like it'd be good to get kind of the other perspective. But
Yeah.
yeah, but that is tough. I think it's with obviously with football the stakes are higher. It's the
Yeah.
money making sport. Like the majority of the sports, I'm trying to think. Besides, you know, if you're a big school, football's making money. Men's basketball is making money. Select schools, women's basketball is starting to make more money, which is great.
And
Like
baseball
and baseball and
and
very, I think,
hockey.
yeah, for like the non-football schools, like
Hmm.
I know like University of Denver, hockey powerhouse. They don't have football. I'm
Look at
sure
like
hockey brings in a lot of money for them.
the D2 programs that have a D2 program, but they have Division One hockey, like
Yes,
Minnesota
like
State,
St. Cloud
Mankato,
State.
St.
Yep,
Cloud.
St. Cloud State. Yes, I think Iowa wrestling makes money. That's like an
I think
anomaly.
that's
I'm
just because
sure
it's Iowa
Iowa wrestling.
wrestling
Yeah, like I maybe like Penn State wrestling maybe makes money,
and like
but
Idaho.
most of the time the Olympic sports outside of baseball and men's basketball usually aren't profiting, and a
Yeah.
reason a lot of the other sports of like the niche sports, even like soccer, really popular sports, but then especially like more niche sports, like when you get into like your swimming and diving, your golf, your tennis, like sports
Your
that aren't
rifle.
gonna, yeah, those are gonna be paid for by the money that football brings in. So that's from my understanding at least. That's why football usually gets the best facilities. They usually get preference on. They usually get first dibs on practice schedules, this and that, and however shitty it is, it's kind of like, oh, like they're paying for your stuff, but it's like, I don't know. You can't control that football is the most like popular sport in America.
That's the other thing too, is like just by popularity and demands, like those ones
Yeah.
make the most money because the most people watch them.
Yeah. It's not because it's objectively better or worse. And I don't think
Yeah.
it's. I think it's fair. It's not equal. It's fair that because football is bringing in all that money and is paying to support those other sports, that they get like those. They're privy to those, first dibs on stuff like that. I think it's when you treat other sports like second class citizens that they're just treating
That's when
people like
it's
shit.
that's when
That's
you
when
get
it
in
becomes a
trouble.
problem. Like, yeah, you don't have to like that football gets all the nice stuff, but they do help, pay for all the other sports to keep running. And I think as long as they're like respectful and don't like abuse that power, because you can have a shitty football team and they're still going to make more money than like a really good like women's soccer team, just because more people are going to watch football than women's
Yeah.
soccer. It's just more popular sport. So
And then you look at like even if you have like say the number one women's soccer team in the country,
mhm.
right? The hard part is there's probably a little bit more of a lower ceiling on what they can accrue and what they can make to what the football team can, just from like a stadium perspective on seating
Stadium,
sizes.
those games aren't televised as often. Like every
There's
game,
probably
every football game is going to be televised because there's only
yeah,
they play once a week. They have a shorter season. Soccer, they play more games. They have, the season's about the same length, but they usually play 2 games a week. Those games just aren't
they're
televised all the time.
that midweek's not getting on, primetime TV. They're not going to take away a slot. Whereas, like, there's
Yeah,
essentially a day dedicated to college football, a day, 3 days really dedicated on primetime for professional football. On
exactly.
then you look at you go Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Thursday. Like
Hmm.
that's 3 days for one league. That's one complete day. Like people will turn on any sports station in America on Saturdays and know, all right, you have college football on or
Yes.
professional on Sunday. But then, you go outside of America and that's where like that script can kind of get flipped. I think a little bit more so because like the universities themselves don't necessarily have as big of a structured team, whereas it's more so like leagues and developmental leagues where like they go to school to be students and then they do their sports in their leagues to be athletes. So it's a little bit different. And obviously pay scales are different. There's not really an NCAA over there. It's a completely different system, but it does change the game a little bit. Like outside of America, the most popular sport in the world is going to be soccer.
Hmm.
And then it's probably promptly followed by, honestly, I would probably say either baseball or athletics, track and field.
Yep.
Those would probably be, but if you look in America, other than baseball, that's not that's not really the case, you
Yeah, it's
know,
football, basketball,
than baseball.
then baseball, I would say.
Yeah. So those are the ones that are going to get the viewership. They're going to get the money. You look at College World Series in baseball in America. That's rolling nonstop. Every time one of those games on, it's an entire massive event. Like, and then you have like the, I know like there's like a World Series, isn't there, for baseball? Not in MLB where like there's like that's the actual World Series, but like they'll do like
Oh,
international competitions,
World
like where
Baseball
like
Classic.
yes,
Yeah,
where
this
like
year we're in a World Baseball Classic year. That's sick.
yeah,
Yeah, where all the countries compete. They do Olympics. They baseball's in the Olympics now too, but the World
hmm
Baseball Classic is honestly bigger than Olympic baseball, I would say at this point. Yeah, the World
but
Baseball
it's
Classic, and that's yeah. For other countries, that's probably a bigger deal than like the USA. Obviously, like
hmm
as baseball becomes more popular, I feel like it's been becoming a little bit more popular lately, especially like in college, like with it becoming like a you just look at the jobs. You're seeing baseball only jobs. That typically means that sport has enough money to pay for their own strength coach that doesn't have to work with other teams, or at least doesn't have to work with like another like big team, so they're not stretched as thin. So yeah, I think that's a good point there. Another thing I was gonna say, yeah, versus you may not see a soccer game until it. Oh, you cracking a bum? Was that iced tea lemonade?
I had to get some good flavor in.
It's not looking good for Bear Bells. But you may not see like women's soccer until it's like, oh, the semifinal or the national championship on like they're going to be televised somewhere, but it's not going to be on like one of the main ESPN channels. Like I remember when we
No,
played, it's going to be on, ACC network, Big Ten network, more of those niche channels where like they're still televising those games, but like,
someone has to
for
pay a
example,
direct subscription for that network because they
exactly,
really care about it. It's not easily as
exactly,
accessible.
100%. Like I think when I was at Elon, I got to go to men's soccer. We played at Duke and we were on ACC network, and that was like, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that was ACC network. Like not all games are going to be on your ESPN1, ESPN2, ESPNU, stuff like that. They're going to be on more of those niche channels. And to circle back to you know how strength coaches on the Olympic side, especially when we're excluding for baseball and like men's and women's basketball, more of those every other Olympic sport, that they're not held to that standard of if the team doesn't win, they're going to get fired. To me, it's just a matter of, okay, higher risk, higher reward. You want a very high reward. You're going to chase Power Five football. You're going to chase in terms of monetary. In terms of monetary,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you what's like important to you, but like let's just talk flat out money. If I want to make the most money as a collegiate strength and conditioning coach, I'm going to try to go to Power Five football, or I'm going to try to go to or Power
A
Four
big
football,
school.
or men's basketball, or to be a director, something like that. With that higher reward comes a lot higher risk. Versus if you're okay with making a little bit less money, or like you just want to work, that's not as important to you. You're going to trade that off, but you're going to get more stability if you're working with, soccer's, lacrosse's, softball, golf, tennis, all those other sports. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think it's just a trade off that you're willing to make. Like,
It's what's more important to you in this time or the longevity play? Is it the most cash I can make in the smallest amount of time, or is it that I won't be potentially looking for a job in 4 years? And you know, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's just which one is your priority, which one do you find more value in, and what do you want out of that? Because there's going to be that trade-off where you might make a little bit less or a lot less, but you'll never, but if you're happy in a spot, you never have to search again because you'll never be forced into the situation if you're good at your job. Or do
mm,
you want to be doing relatively well, but you know you're at an SEC school and their whole thing is you win a championship every year and you can go 11-2 or 10-2 and they'll be like, that's great, but we didn't win, so you're out.
yeah. And I would think it's a little bit tough to, once you get going and you're at a certain level, who's going to be like, okay,
I'm gonna take a
let me
step
think
back.
logically. Let me go work at a school where I feel like it's hard. Once you're at the top, you probably want to keep, you lose
Going
your
to the
job
top.
somewhere. You're like, oh, let me find another job at another big school. It's probably hard to check yourself. One, because you're used to working at that high level. You're used to making that type of salary. Depending on how old you are, like you want to keep doing that. I would think it's probably hard to step back from that too. Or it's like, outside pressures too. Like, what are people going to say about me if I just take this, smaller school job, or like if I get out of football, this and that.
There's like that little bit of ego that comes into it, and like
Mm-hmm.
self perseverance is like, I want the veneer that everything is perfect versus like, hey, just being open about like, got caught in a shitty situation. I'm looking for more stability. And there's been
Mm-hmm.
coaches that have done that, and it's like I just think it takes like a bigger person that's like, I don't want to say like more mature, but like more mature in life to be like, is that to kind of question themselves, is that really what I want?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And I think you got to be okay with, people. If people see that from the outside, they're gonna think that like you did something bad, or like you're like not as good as you used to be because you're taking, quote unquote, a
A
lesser
lesser job.
job, a lesser job, versus what's actually happened is you're just making what's the best decision for you, and knowing what you want versus what's expected, which those are two different things. And I think knowing the difference can make all the difference when it comes to, um, obviously if you have a family, you got to think about their future, your future, and just like, do you like what you're doing? Are you okay with that? Or are you just feeling like you have to constantly chase the carrot because that's what you've built up to, and you don't feel like you can, let yourself
Step
down from that
back.
standard? Exactly.
That's that's like one of the other things too is like, some of you'll kind of see a little bit more so of like someone stepping back when they're a little bit older in the field, when they do have those kids and that wife, and they're like, they kind of have those like family conversations of, I can't keep moving them everywhere. These kids have to find a new school, make new friends, like versus like to a certain extent, someone might just be like, you guys got to put up with that. And, then it's the argument of like, is that a selfish thing to do? Or is it that they've grown accustomed to this, perhaps a lifestyle that you've afforded them based off of your salary? And you're like, well, you can make new friends, or, you guys can share a bedroom now, potentially, depending on whatever it is. But obviously, but it's one of those things
Mm-hmm.
that all those go into it. And it's kind of a tough thing, but it's the nature of the field of like, this is what happens every, Thanksgiving, January time period. Like it's a cyclical job market when those openings come up, or they'll come at, May, those like 3 periods. Thanksgiving, if you have like someone who's immediately fired, January when they want to make it through semester, or like May when they're like, you can finish the rest of the year. And it just depends. And then that's when you'll see those kind of things open and leave. And tough place to be, in my opinion.
It definitely is. And you see it too with, you can make the argument with like pro athletes. There's a few that, most of them stop playing because they can no longer keep up with the level. A lot of them, the people that are very good play until, they're older and decide they've had enough. Some people decide to step away a little bit earlier. Like I think of like Andrew
Luke
Luck's a good
Kuechly.
example. Luke Kuechly, Andrew Luck. Wasn't Megatron another one of those guys that retired a little bit early? People were really surprised.
Yep.
And yeah, you made a good point. Like it takes a little bit of a different type of, maybe like a more mature person, or just people that value different things, or know that, they're willing to to get a job outside of what they were doing before. I think that's part of the fear, is like a lot of these guys, like that's what all they've done their whole life. And they're like, I mean, that's kind of the thing in pro sports. Yeah, the careers are short. You make as much money as you can in a 10-year window, and you hope that, that's enough to kind of feed you for the
Set
rest
you
of
up.
your life. Or maybe you get into, broadcasting or coaching, something like that. But it's not like, oh shit, like I'm screwed now because I only did 2 years of college. I need to go back to school, this and that. Like I know Andrew Luck's the general manager of Stanford football. So like he's not just bumming around. He's not just
Doing
bumming
nothing.
around. Yeah, like obviously that's maybe a little bit different situation because he went to Stanford. But it's similar to what you could say, like coaches who, get to the top, like Jake Niederman, really good example. He was head in FBS school and decided to take a step back, or just, I don't even say take a
Change.
step back. Yeah, just he just made a change that was clearly best for him and his family. And like I think if you were to talk to him, like he said, he climbed up the ladder. He got to have all those experiences, see what it was like at all those levels, see what it was like at the top. He's like, all right, like I did it. This is what's best for my family. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't like the easiest decision, but I think a lot of people, like I feel like myself included, would have a really tough time like stepping away from that and like doing something different, for like fear of, if you left something on the table, or what other people might think of you. So I think that says a lot about people that are able to
Make
make that
that change.
change. Yeah.
It becomes one of those things for them where they're just like, is this worth it for me anymore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so it, not to get depressing, but um, it's a tough thing. But there is like, and I think everyone eventually goes through that conversation. Some people just do it earlier than others.
Mhm.
Whether you don't want to be the 70-year-old hanging on still, like, that's probably well past like their prime, their thought process, whether it be on the floor or how they program of like continuously learning and stuff like that, to where they're just kind of like, you know, I almost want to, I think of it as like a midlife crisis where it's like the 55-year-old that buys a Corvette and he's like, I still got it, you
Yeah,
know?
I'm gonna be young again.
Yeah, where it's like those kind of guys, and then it's like, you know, they think it's like they can still do everything the same way it was before, or like they haven't really updated their thought processes on things, versus like somebody who maybe 35 and they're like, all right, man, I've been there, I've reached it, I'm going to take a smaller school job and I'm going to like settle into that role, not settle like
Hmm.
personally, but like settle into a role where they can be there for a long time.
Yeah, and another thing I think of is, oh, lost my train of thought. But how? I mean, like, how has your goals will obviously like change. A lot of times they'll change as you get older. Like, what was your when you first got into the field? Did you have like a certain goal, and has that changed from the time you started to now? Because like I'm like very early in this, and I feel like that's already like I look at that a little bit different than I did like just even like a few years ago.
When I first started, it was like I want to go to like a Power Five school and be a director, and I considered like being like an Olympic director as well. But it was like I wanted to be a director, didn't want to have like a boss, quote unquote. Um, and every job I looked at or every internship was like, would this be a step in that direction? And that's when you know, I was a director at like 23, but I was obviously not at a Power Four school.
Mhm.
So I kind of reached it and I was like, holy shit, like there's a lot more. There's a lot more of the job than like being a director of and like having a staff and like continuing to develop them. It was very much more like, hey, you have 30% of coaching and coaching related tasks that are your job. And then there's the other 70%, which are administrative meetings, BS, all the problems kind of come up to you, this, that, and the other. And it was like I spent so much time doing everything but the programming that the programming was like not an afterthought, but it was like, okay, I got to cram this in somewhere because every other hour is like accounted for. So, like, when I took the job at Elon, I had already been like fully like well and aware of like, okay, like you're stepping away from coaching potentially forever after getting the job at Team Builder. And I was like, okay, like this, maybe it's just time for a different career. And then when I came here, it was like I get to enjoy coaching and like being around the people that I am. And it's not like, you can ask anybody, I might be a nobody there. That's fine. I don't care. But I wouldn't have like thought that my progression, I always wanted to kind of do both and do like tech and coaching because I knew
Mhm.
there wasn't as much money in coaching, but I didn't think I would kind of be in the unique position that I'm in now, which, for lack of a better term, I may be one of like five that are in the sports performance world, but I'm
Yeah,
also
maybe.
probably like I may be one of one in the truly unique situation that I'm in.
Yeah, I would say you're an N of one from what I know. I would
Yeah.
be I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's in the same spot. Um,
Yeah. Like I wouldn't have pinned that to be an occurrence.
you
And
can't
obviously
plan
there's a
that.
no. And there's a lot more shit that kind of comes with it too of, your time schedule,
Mhm.
making sure everything's planned out, dealing with things like and now kind of moving and expanding that role past just the weight room into now sports practice and being at meets and coaching at meets and also recruiting. Like your time also goes a lot into that now on the weekends at nights. And there's all the different things that come with it, but I probably wouldn't change it. There would have to be a monumental like offer on the table. to get me to leave doing that. You
Mhm.
know, like and now I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, I have a great group of friends that I work with, friends that I hang out with. I have a house. Like, you kind of build that life around the situation you're in, and you're like, okay, you start to think like, okay, what if somebody came in and was like, I want to make you a director of like a P4 football program? I'm like, even then it's like, okay, you kind of consider it's like, well, if we are losing a bunch, probably out in 3 years, would I make enough to be able to not restart life, but go somewhere and establish this again, this kind of like the life that I have? And it's like, you start to weigh it and you're like, the money's got to be there. A sense of security has to be there. Like, the 4 P's we kind of go back to of like personal fulfillment, personal growth, like pay and progression, like those would all have to be so much exponentially higher than what I'm in currently to be able to like change the situation for me. But I wouldn't have, if you asked 21-year-old me, is this what you'd see is happening? Or is like, are those your goals? Like, how would I looked at you like you're crazy? Like, I would have been like, no. But now it's where I'm at. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to change this. What about you? Like, I know you said yours changed from like, you know, quote unquote, your short career, but like,
Yeah, and I wouldn't even. I feel like when I started, I never even had like a clear end goal. I think I just wanted to, like, at first, I was thinking, I knew one thing I've always known is I want to have my own facility. It's not a matter of like if, but when. So that's like the ultimate end goal. But then there's like, okay, I knew I didn't want to do that right away because I'm like, well, I don't have enough money. I just don't want to do that right now. And I want to like try to at least do this coaching thing like at a decently high level and like get good at it before I open my own business head coaching. I think that's a good idea. So, I mean, at first I thought, I was like, well, I think I liked basketball. I played basketball. I was like, well, basketball could be cool. I knew at one point I said it, I thought it would be cool to work in pro sports, but I didn't really, I didn't have something specific. And then this job came up and I was like, well, it seemed like a hell yeah, like a no brainer. And I think at first I was like, well, naturally, I'm like, well, let me just try to climb as high as I can. Maybe I can go to the big leagues. And I'm not saying like that's not something I don't want to do, but I think over time, my goals have become, or even the things that are important to me have become less external and more internal, if that makes sense, versus
mm-hmm,
saying, I want to be this job at this level with this sport. I care more about like, am I still learning? Am I around good people? And do I enjoy the place that I get to live? I think if you get, for me, like good people, and if you're in an environment where you're still learning and improving, that will take care of a lot of other things later down the line. Like I'd rather make a little less money and have that versus make a little bit more money, but maybe I'm by myself or I don't have people that like we had at Elon and like I think we have here at the Cubs, like we want to have like discussions around training and challenge each other's ideas. I know it's not like that all those every other place. And for me, maybe if I was 10 years older, the money would be a little bit more important. But right now, like I don't have a ton of responsibilities. I still have a lot to learn. So I think, having a little, I'm gonna take that over making a little bit more money. So I was kind of all over the place, but I think it kind of boiled down to now it's like I feel a little bit better about like, yeah, I still want to like improve and progress. But I think if you improve and progress as a coach over time, opportunities to get quote unquote better jobs are probably going to be there for you versus always trying to look, I'm glued to, the job boards and seeing like what's, can I make a little bit of a leap here, a little bit of a leap here, and not really appreciating and trying to do the best job you are where you're at. Because I think that's kind of, you can get sucked into that too. Like, being here for 6 months, here for 6 months. which is part of the nature of the job to some extent. But Coach DeMarco made a really good point about this. Is like you can't really like build anything if you're only there for like if you want to really build up a department or a program that takes a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like for him, like he's been able to, you want to talk about developing athletes. You're not really developing people if you're only there for, a third of their career versus if you've been in the same place for, 6 to 10 years, you may have seen people who were in the program for 5 or 6 years and see how they develop throughout their career. And that helps your, views on training, I'm sure too. Not everybody can say that if you're always jumping around all the time.
I'd say so. And like when you're in that spot, people tend to think, oh, I'll go build it better because I'll have more resources and this and that. It's like, okay, but you also need to understand you're restarting again and again and again. So, like, in year one, you're not really making monumental change. For the most part, you're probably instituting some sort of piece into your system without hopefully turning everything on its head.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a big thing. Year two, you'll probably start to like understand after being it in a year, like a little bit more cracks in the system and what needs to change, how you can change it, and things like that. Year three, so on and so forth. But when you're only there for 6 months to a year, did you really, and everyone has the idea of I want to leave it better than I found it. Did you really leave it better than you found it? Because if your plan is to be gone in a year, or you're going to leave in a year, whatever it may be, you've probably done worse to them because now, if you knew you were going to leave or you had that inkling in the back of your mind, you've just held them off from getting their long term solution that will create the long term change. You've band aided it for a short term. And now, you know, not to say that those kids are going to obviously love you or the coaches love you or the administration loves you, but now they have to go through it, quote unquote, a heartbreak twice. Um, and then from there, they also have to go through, refine this job search, pay more to get the job search done, set them back. The time frames all shift again. All the stuff changes to where they're not really in a better position. They might be even worse because they could have done this last time, but you gave them the allure that you were going to fix everything.
Yeah. And I do understand, when you're making very little money, like you may just have to find some place that pays you a little bit more money and you're not really worrying about all those other things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're treating every place you're at like a stepping stone to the next one, you're probably not paying as much attention to doing as good of a job as you can at where you're at, which to me is eventually that'll catch up with you, I would think. I don't like there's you can't go wrong with just trying to do the best job you can with where you're at. And then over time, if you get better, you're probably going to have a good opportunity, a better opportunity in the long run if that's what you want to do. But always focusing on that next step and never really being, present for where you're at. Yeah, that might be able to work in the short term, but I think extend that out over a career and it's probably going to come back to bite you in the ass a little bit.
I really think so. I think it's a selfish way of thinking, and obviously be selfish because it's your life and you have to live it. But at the same time, like, you can be selfish and be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be, you can't be selfish and lie about it and say like, oh, I'm here for the long term. I want to be here for the rest of my career. You turn around in a year and you're like, I'm out, get out of here.
Yeah.
For a $3,000, $5,000 raise, when you could say, hey, just so you know, I am looking at other jobs and here's why. I'd like to stay, but we would need to fix these issues or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And I don't know if people have enough of that skill set to have the uncomfortable conversations. And that's probably a thing within the field of itself where you're probably not in great positions to have those conversations, but when you're at a point of like, kind of shit or get off the pot and you're going to leave, you can make those horizons like, okay, you do want me to stay. You think you believe in me. These are the issues that I've found that we need to fix. We need to either come up with a plan or I am going to leave. Give them that chance,
Hmm.
especially if you
Yeah.
do truly like the situation that you're in. You just want
Hmm.
things to be a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, be great where your feet are is a saying that I really like. Just be great where your feet are. Wherever you're at, doesn't matter if you're in the worst or the best situation. Do the best you can. There's no way that that isn't a good strategy to me.
Mm-hmm. On a lighter note,
Yeah. Let's lighten it up a little bit.
let's lighten it up with some depressing news. Um, quick little energy drink update. Obviously, we are the Bev Boys. We do talk about energy drinks. Monster is going to be discontinuing a couple flavors and a couple different things this entire year. They have new plans to roll out some new things. Like I know the Punk Punch will be a permanent staple. You'll be able to find some things like that more available in the gas stations and the convenience stores. But with that, obviously, they're not just going to take over 6 coolers. They're getting rid of some stuff. Um, so some things that they'll be getting rid of will be the Ultra Red is now going away. It'll be discontinued this year. So that is the Ultra Zero kind of like watermelon flavor. The white pineapple is going to be taken away. It's like the Monster Reserve. That will also be, I think there's like a peach flavor, like a peaches and cream or some kind of like, it's either peach or like an orange cream flavor in that reserve slot is also going away. The Chaotic, which is the juice flavor, nobody drinks those because they taste like shit and they're like 400 grams of sugar. Who cares? That's going away. Great. Get all the full sugar energy drinks out of there. Nobody drinks them. Just get rid of them. I don't know why. The other thing that's kind of crazy is like they're 12-ounce kind of like skinny cans. Those are all getting removed, at least from
Yeah.
convenience stores. They'll be
Yeah.
like
Kind of a
four
bummer.
packs. Yeah. There's been times where I'm like, a 12-ounce would be kind of nice. Like, I don't need a full 16-ounce, but like, hey, it's 6:30 p.m. and I do want to pick me up.
I was gonna say like a 2 o'clock, but it's okay. Yeah, we're a little bit different. Yeah, we're on different sleep
um,
schedules. That's all, folks.
yeah, he sleeps. Um, and then the other one that I am kind of happy about, just because I think it tastes like shit, is like the rain mango. The rainstorm mango is like it's leaving. I don't know if there's any plans to kind of replace that flavor, but it didn't sell. It's extremely sweet. It's an artificial mango flavor. Like Rain's bread and butter is like what you have in your hand right now.
This
It's
and white gummy bear,
white gummy
cherry
bear. It's
limeade.
cherry limeade. It's the sour gummy worm. These like these 300 milligram 16-ounce
Razzleberry.
cans. Razzleberry. Bring back the lemon drop.
Yeah, what are we talking about? Replace
They had
that
like
mango
a
with the lemon drop.
yeah, and they had like that like melon flavor that was actually pretty good too. It wasn't quite watermelon. It was like watermelon cantaloupe, like kind of like the melon flavor that you would see in like a lot of like Korean sodas.
Hmm.
That was really good. Um,
Melamania.
Melomania, that's what it was. Yes,
Hmm.
that's like the bread and butter, and then you toss in a flavor, see if it works. If it doesn't, you remove it. They tried Rainstorm. They had like I think it's like 3 or 4 flavors. They had like the kiwi apple, which it's okay. They had the mango, which sucked.
Yeah, they had
um,
the guava strawberry, which I tried. It was meh,
so it's okay. Like
meh.
you're gonna get those are like the ones that like these like kind of like off kilter side brands that they have of these where it's like it's the Celsius competitor because everyone's trying to beat Celsius. It's like you're not going to beat Celsius because people don't buy Celsius for the product. They buy Celsius because they've been marketed to. What you need to do is improve like the marketing for those products. Rain is a product that's probably not going to go for the same population that Celsius is. Rain's 300 milligrams. You know, your star premier athlete that you've signed is Thor. That's your population for Rain, man. Like it's Travis
Hmm.
Hunter and Thor are 2 different populations. You know, Travis Hunter is like 180 pounds soaking wet. Like 300 milligrams might kill the guy.
Yes.
But Thor's like, that's a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah, it's a
You know,
blip on his radar.
it's a very different thing. You know, this kid's he's in Jacksonville, and you know it's him like fishing and then like going to hit a quick workout for his off season versus Thor is like, I need 300 milligrams so I don't die underneath this 1,000 pound squat. Like, just understand your like who you're going after and what you're marketing to versus like Celsius. Again, it's a lot catered towards like females, like Alani New drinkers aren't drinking Reigns in, you know, for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because Alani New flavors aren't great. But like it's just that's what it is. And my hope is that by clearing out old inventory, removing some of these SKUs, they'll kind of revolutionize a little bit. And it's like you could do a 200 milligram rain. It doesn't have to be the Rain Storm. It could literally just be the same flavors you have now. Just offer a 200 milligram flavor of like the sour gummy worm, the white gummy bear, you know, the sherbet. I know people like that. I don't, but or the cherry limeade, things like that. Just do that. Make it easy. Make it way better on yourself. No one's gonna complain.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've talked about like Ghost with their new flavors. I know Cran Grape is out now. You are able to find that. It should be appearing in convenience stores, vitamin shops, GNCs, those kind of stores. Um, if I can get my hands on that pretty soon, I know I will. But that's kind of it. I know Ghost had like, or not Ghost, sorry, C4 had the Serial Killer, which I don't know. It's like a cereal milk cereal kind of flavor. I don't see that becoming unless they're just going after the people who just love the pure like androgynous sugar flavor. But we've been a big advocate against stuff like that on our channel.
If
But
it's anything like the Skittles flavor, I probably won't like it because it's hard to do Skittles flavor because it's more unless you do one specific Skittle.
do the red Skittle or the grape Skittle or the lime Skittle. You
Yeah, but
know,
it was just
if you throw them
Skittles.
all, yeah, it's like
They need to do it more like the Starburst, where they did yellow Starburst, pink Starburst, red Starburst.
100%. And those flavors annihilated it.
Banged.
Those were so good. Same with the Hawaiian punch flavor. I don't like punch. I am an advocate against like fruit punch because it's androgynous sugar. The Hawaiian punch flavor was sick.
Mm-hmm.
Those it ripped. Corner down one significant flavor, attack that. It'll go great.
Exactly.
That's all for our energy drink news. Now we have a different topic. Let's transition here.
Yeah, let's go. We want to go OG S&C talk, or we want to go energy drinks that flopped.
Ooh, this one's up to you. I'm cool with either.
Dude, let's bring it. Let's bring it back to old times. We were talking about
Let's
like
do it.
what was the when you first got into this. What were some of like the first programs you know read about, or some of the first books you were exposed to early on? Was there any book that like made you think a little bit differently about things later on? I know for me, if we don't count all the bodybuilding.com articles and Tiger Fitness and T Nation, which gotta give respect for there, but actual books. Oh, for me, some of the first ones I read were the Tier System. That was a big one. My first like big internship at Sac State. We read the Tier System, Practical Programming, and Starting Strength by Mark Ripito. Tier System is by Joe Ken, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mark Ripito, Starting Strength, Practical Programming. I think those are two pretty common ones for people that starting to get into the strength training in general. Charlie Francis, the concepts, structure of training for speed were a couple ones I read early on at Simpson. Those were kind of like my beginner stack, and then I got into some of the other ones like agile periodization was a little bit later on. That one was like kind of like made me think a lot. It's a little bit more philosophical. I really like those books. But what was it for you?
The first book I ever read was the 1 by 20 book by Michael Yessis. That one got literally thrown at me as an intern, and it was like, read that, you'll understand what we're doing here. So that one was, shout out Alex, uh, Bev boyfriend, but he threw that one at me. He's like, read this, you'll understand. Um, so I read that one. Obviously, starting strength was a big one too. Like, I think everybody who's getting into the field, if you just read starting strength, you're off to a great start. Practical programming is another great one. It wasn't one of my first. You know, as I kind of left that internship, I had read what would have been kind of like the very, very, very early iterations of like the 8 vector book when Jordan was really formulating his ideas. It wasn't necessarily, written and formatted on paper. It was more so like, hey, I have this notes in this thing that I have right here. Read this. And it would kind of made me understand like the training that he was implementing with us. And then, you know, when I kind of transitioned and started working with a little bit more with like volleyball, I was given the Champion School by Bondarchuk. That was a great one. It really kind of changed the way I kind of like looked at like LTAD and like that long-term athletic development. Coming back into like sprint stuff, I read like Applied Sprint Training by James Smith and worked through like Charlie Francis stuff, because once you read one, you kind of read the other, since James like was very influenced by Charlie Francis. But the one that, and obviously triphasic, if you were a strength coach in Minnesota, in the entire state, you've probably read that book inside and out. But yeah, and then there was a lot of like other small works that I read, and it was like this article by this person, that go into like that elite FTS kind of stuff, like where, you look at like a Matt Van Dyke and he's writing down these insane conceptual ideas where he's breaking down things and finding their presentations on like, PCSP on like the general preparation stuff. But the one that like really flipped the game on the head, I remember I was in like my end of my first year at my master's, and I got a book recommendation. So I literally asked for that book for Christmas, and I remember getting the book and I started just reading into it right away. And it was the Governing Dynamics of Coaching, which was also a James Smith book. Now, for anyone that's listening, like James Smith he is a thinker. Like as much of a coach as he was like a music theory major. Like he's a thinker. Everything is like, if he could vomit his words onto a wall, it would look like the mom from Stranger Things just scribbling up there. Shout out Winona Ryder. But that one was like, it was one of those books like you had mentioned where it really changes the game on how you like think about stuff, because it's conceptual thoughts. And it's really understanding like stress management with like the athletes. And I feel like in a day-to-day operation, I reference things from that book more often than other books, which are more X's and O's practical programming, things like that, where this is more so like, one of the most common ones is like when we talk about stress with an athlete, that the body can't really define what type of stress it is, whether it be physical, mental, psychological, whatever it is. It just knows that it's under duress. So the cortisol spikes, and it has that stress response within fight or flight. And then kind of talking about like the cup theory, where it's like, you're a cup, you're this can, you can afford, 12 ounces of stress. Well, 8 of that is school and life. 3 of that is, psychological things from your sport. I have 1 ounce of stress I can give you in the physical component. Whereas if I give you, 6, you're going to overflow. That's when you'll break. But our goal is to get you from a 12-ounce can to a 16-ounce can. So that way you can have more affordance on that, and then, I just said affordance, and it made me think of one of like kind of learning a lot about like emergence with like the programming and the affordances and constraints to light approach. I remember reading that. One of the people involved, Rich White, shout out my guy. He was the director at the time when I was an intern. Like that was one of the stuff that I was learning from. So like, everyone reads those basic ones, which are really, really, really good books. And then you kind of get into some of the other things that kind of, I don't want to say change how you think, but expand the the bandwidth of what you're thinking versus like make them more muscular or make them more fast or get them
Mhm.
better conditioning like MMA conditioning. You know, it goes from that to what does that overall picture look like? And you almost feel like that meme where the guy, it's like the anatomical model and he just has like all the brain thoughts kind of going behind him. But those were really good books, you know, and it's like there's so much information out there. I think that has yet to truly be tapped into. And I don't know if enough people they want a condensed version, and I'm guilty of this too, of like, okay, give me this in, 300 words or less so I can just understand the concepts. And it's like you can read the concepts and see the big picture, but are you really garnering the expertise or the knowledge from that without the intertwined kind of smaller sentences and examples through that? Because it doesn't resonate as hard because you're not like seeing the problem of how they came to be, where you could take that information and apply it to another situation that's like that.
Mhm. Another one I read during the Elon internship was Quadrant System. I really
Oh,
like
great
that.
book.
Like I just was thumbing through that the other day. Quadrant System, that's a really good one. Yeah, I think for me it was the agile periodization, strength training manual, and agile periodization. That was one where it was really made me think, especially because you see all these like periodization models, and you think the thing that book really taught me is like there's no real. He's kind of the view that like periodization like doesn't not like it doesn't exist, but like it doesn't matter. You don't need to follow all these strict models, and it really just it displays his way of thinking about training, and I think it just kind of encourages you to create your own system of training. Read everything, take what can be useful into your situation, and kind of leave the rest and iterate on it over time
Mm-hmm.
versus just saying I'm a triphasic guy or I'm a tier system guy. Nothing wrong with those two things, but if you're that's just what those things are. That's someone else's view of training that they put into a book. It wasn't like, oh, like the principles, the physic, like these aren't like physic laws of triphasic training. It was what Cal Dietz found out through all that experimentation, and that's his thoughts around training put into a book. It's not like set in stone, concrete cardinal rules. So I think everyone should kind of strive to do that for their own. Not saying that you have to write a book, but have a wide range of information that you take in, and over time you're going to dive into different rabbit holes, and you're going to try things out. You're going to see what works, you're going to see what doesn't. You're going to iterate over time, and you're going to come up with hopefully your own thought processes around training. And it's going to be, you're going to be obviously influenced by different people. More people may have a heavier influence on with this person or this person or this school of thought, but over time hopefully you have a philosophy on training that is unique to you. And that's that's why I think probably the best one of the best forms of continuing it is just having conversations with other coaches about training and kind of stress testing your ideas against them, being able to defend, being able to like give a legitimate argument, being able to debate and disagree, and actually make sure that what you think is that you've actually thought it out and thought it through. Because if you never have someone disagree with you and kind of like put you on the spot, you're never going to know if you actually like have thought those ideas through. And it may be a little bit uncomfortable in the moment, but you'll be better for it in the long run. So
100% agree. And a great example of that is probably another, I guess, series of books that were gifted to me. And it was very, very much, again, by a mentor. And he was like, you need to read these. And it was like the West Side Barbell books. There's a ton of stuff I do not agree with in the West Side Barbell Book of Methods or the special strength development or the, strength training for speed training. But the concepts, the certain things that you pull from there, you can integrate into your program and create your own system, like you had mentioned earlier, right? And it's like, do I think that, every sport needs to come in here and have a dynamic effort lower body, a max effort lower body, and have those be like essentially 85% plus of their max for singles, doubles, or triples, and then kind of in the more max effort stuff, like go super heavy to where they're pounding far more PRs, every other week. No. But if you take a little bit of that and say, okay, if we have a dynamic based day or a max based day where it's more of a workload day, high volume accessories that are lighter weight to where it just builds a very resilient tissue. If you think of a high volume accessory that builds a resilient tissue, that leads to another book that is incredible, which would be, we kind of think of like Super Training by Yuri Verkhoshansky, and you think of his plyometric progression. Extensive plyometrics are a high volume accessory that's very low intensity that builds a robust system to be prepped to do the max effort type of stuff. Those things have parallels to it to where it's really impressive when you see that the thought breaks down. It's like, to an extent, Louis using some of those concepts, but with, maybe single joint exercises with like bands or reverse hypers and saying, okay, you need a really, really strong lower back. Okay, well, we can't just do back work at insanely high intensities 24/7. So you're going to have 1,000 reps at, 225, which for the general population would probably be like 135 or a little bit lower instead of 225. And it's like, you're going to just do 1,000 reps of reverse hypers. As soon as you're done with your big lift, go hit your accessories, and it's that. And it's boring and it's dull and it's going to work. There's those things and those ideologies that you can pull from that allow you to have a more, I guess, like conceptual thought process, but at the same time, like a little bit of a spatial one versus a linear thought process where this happens and then this happens. First, we can kind of go into, okay, well, I can't just continuously tax the hell out of you trying to get this stronger. But what I can do is probably promote a little bit of hypertrophy, make it more robust to, get the pennation angles, which I don't know if Louis was truly thinking of things like that when he was like, you need a better low back. You're going to go do 1,000 reps of that and just continuously chipping away at it, or like tricep pushdowns because they needed a better finish on their bench. And he's like, you got to go get that band. You're going to hit 1,000 pushdowns, that kind of stuff, and you can pull from those ideas. And again, like in those books, it's not just, need a better bench at the top, do tricep work. It's like, here's why we did this. And here's our specific example of them not being able to complete a lift because they couldn't finish. Okay, we understood that at the finish, the tricep is the end lockout. They're so tired and they're so beat up, and we trained so hard on those main lifts, we didn't have the time, the energy, whatever, to kind of go through it, which is crazy because they trained for like 4 hours every morning on a full
Didn't
Bob
have time.
Evans. Yeah,
We
didn't have time. But it's
On
like,
a
okay,
full
they're
Bob Evans breakfast, paid for by Louis.
yeah,
God,
but like,
legend.
so like they had that thought process where it's like, okay, well, you could probably take a concept from that. It's like, just go high volume, and a giant set is a great way to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, go get. I was hitting those in the Globo gym that I worked out in over the holidays.
That's right.
I was like, let me get on this cable row machine with the mag grip. Let me just hit a giant set of 100.
Exactly. Quick as you can.
Yeah. Like those concepts kind of transition over.
Yeah, and that's another good point. I made a post about this not too long ago about how I think one thing to think about is looking at adjacent fields in as far as just training goes in general and trying to apply it to sports performance, because we forget that the field of strength and conditioning is fairly new compared to things like bodybuilding, strongman, Olympic weightlifting, stuff like that. We need to look. It's funny that you hear people say like, oh, like we're not training bodybuilders, but like you probably should have some methods that bodybuilders would use if you want to get bigger. It's probably the most efficient way to do it is to use bodybuilding methods, because that's what their whole sport is based around. If you want to get stronger, you may use some powerlifting methods because that's what their whole sport is based around. And you take parts from these adjacent fields and, you kind of get sports performance at the end. Like we take stuff from sprinting, we take stuff from track and field, we put it in our program. So really, like I feel like I view S&C as like almost it's a combination of a lot of these different fields, a little bit more specified to that sport. And I don't want to get down the route of like sport specificity because we could do a whole episode just on what does that even mean to you and like why does it matter if it matters. But I think it's worthwhile to Poliquin principles is a good example of that. Like there's some good stuff in there. Like if you wanna get fucking jacked, read Poliquin principles. Or like some of the Renaissance periodization, the scientific methods of hypertrophy, I think it's called, something around there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good book to read into. I know Brad Schoenfeld's written a couple books on hypertrophy. Obviously, like West Side Barbell is obviously if you want powerlifting information, or you can go with Juggernaut or anything like a Dave Tate Elite FTS is going to have a lot of good content on that. And then even like other stuff um, like see how other sports and domains train, like rock climbing, for example. I think that if you want really good grip, which is probably advantageous for a lot of
Almost
athletes.
everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say throwing the baseball hard, a lineman being able to like grab people, wrestlers. What's some of the training that like a rock climber would do? Okay, you can probably implement some of that stuff into your training, but you're not going to think off the top of your head like, oh, let me look at what rock climbers do to help you get better at help me as a strength coach. So I think it's good to, like I say, cast a wide net of consuming information. You'll eventually like kind of whittle down, I think, over time, and you'll go into rabbit holes like I mentioned. But don't be afraid to don't just read stuff about football if you're in football. Don't just read stuff about baseball if you're in baseball. There's things that can be taken from a lot of different sports. Like gymnastics is something that I've been kind of more interested in, because like I think some of these like gymnastics type movements can help you build really strong and robust shoulders, in particular, stuff like that. Gymnasts have jacked upper bodies. What are they doing for training? No, I'm probably not going to get my athletes to do a full iron cross, but like, can I get them to do some sort of like handstands or some like rudimentary work on the rings or something like that to for some more like general prep. So that's something that I try to remind myself of is, yeah, you can get very specific and like look at what specific sports are doing, and obviously like watching the sport is good, but it's good to have ideas from adjacent or even like seemingly unrelated fields. And I think a lot of times you'll find that some of the core principles can relate back to what you were trying to figure out in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Should we wrap
I
this
think
bad boy
that's
up?
yeah, that's a good note to end on. A little less depressing, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys already know we love the Rain sour gummy worm. I'm not even sure what I rated this bad boy. I think my favorite flavor of Rain is still the white gummy bear. I would say this, or I do like the razzleberry. Is probably going to be this is going to be my second or third favorite Rain flavor. Obviously, a lot of caffeine. Very simple formula. They usually have good deals. The can looks sick. It's usually going to be in like the mid eights for me. I'd probably go like an 8.5, 8.6 on this. Probably like an 8.7, 8.8 for that white gummy bear. Again, if it had a little bit more nootropics, maybe I would be higher. But I think that's kind of you got to appreciate a drink for what it is. It's not a gorilla mind. It's not there to have you zone in and focus. It's there to help your red line quick, and that's really about it. So you got to appreciate a drink for what it is, not wish it was something it's not.
Very, very, very true. Um. Yeah. I'm trying to think
What's up
here.
with the yeah? What's up with the bear bells? Did you finish that can? Were you even able to finish it?
I'm about halfway done.
Wow,
Um.
hour and a half. Not a good sign.
It just has a little bit of that artificial kind of flavoring, and it falls flat. It's very mute. I think for the crowd that loves I feel like this Bear Bells is like this is the CrossFit crowd.
That and
You
FitRx.
know, yes, like it's one of those things where they're like, I gotta have more protein, but I want to have a little bit of caffeine for my pre-workout, but it's got to be natural because I'm paleo. That kind of stuff. It's okay at best. It's not great. It definitely feels a little heavy when you're drinking it. It's probably from the protein. I think we've talked about it before. Of just make a protein shake, make an energy drink, and the flavor is like I said, it's okay. A can looks sick. I do like the
I
like
like
kind
the
of
color
like
palette.
the retro kind of color. It reminds me a little bit of like shout out Bum for saving the day. I had one delivered to me from my girlfriend like literally as I was talking. That's why I was laughing earlier. But it reminds me a little bit of that like color palette, that kind of styling, that classic look. You know, it's just it falls flat. And I know it's sugar free and it's but you can put some sweeteners in there. Really quick, I'm going to take a look at the sweetener. Um, citric acid. It is a sucralose sweetener, which you would think just use a little bit more. Um, it uses vegetable juice for color, but it doesn't have the cherry juice that could kind of put that flavor a little bit more over the top. That's not to say that like the pineapple sunrise or I can't remember the other flavor. I can try and pull it up real quick. It's pineapple sunrise, wild strawberry, and sweet cherry. I think like the wild strawberry could be better. I think the pineapple sunrise probably could be better. And it's just the cherry flavor itself probably fell flat and mute with this, and the burps taste like like cough syrup. I'm gonna go 5.6.
All right.
It's
There you
it's a
have it.
little low, but it is what it is.
Yeah. It's all good. Honest reviews,
Yeah.
folks. We're not
Hmm.
loyal to anybody, though we could be for a price.
That price is lower than you think out there, so come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, first episode of 2026. 2026 is here. So
Hmm.
hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. You know where to find us on socials, bevboys.tv. We've said our personal socials 1,000 times. Find us. Make sure if you do enjoy the podcast, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. That really helps us out with the algorithms. Helps us out even more if you do leave a review. So if you want to help out the boys, make sure to do that. Bevboys.com if you want to grab some merch. And yeah, we're going to be rolling into the new year. Same as always. We're coming up on almost, this is like very close to our 2-year anniversary. I think in the next like week or so, something like that.
Yeah,
It's
I
very,
think
very
it's
close.
I think it's January 11th.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the 8th or the 11th. We'll have to look where we posted that first episode. But yeah, maybe we'll have a little
Yeah.
2-year anniversary episode this coming week. So stay tuned for that. Obviously, appreciate you guys with the support along the way. We're still going strong.
We'll see you in the next one.
See you next one. Peace.
Peace.